Welcome to the Savvy Working Mom podcast. This is the place where we share strategies to help you create a life you love. I'm your host, Whitney, a real-life working mom in the tech industry, professional speaker, and coach. I'm going to help you figure out how to work and mom in a way that brings you joy by using simple systems and through interviews with other working moms who are making it work. Remember that with intentional and daily action, you can live your best days now and forever. Hey Mama, I am so excited to have Sue Lehman on the show today. Sue is the founder of Keep It Simple with Sue, a virtual assistant service. She is a small business owner who understands both the administrative needs of individuals and small businesses. She has over 20 years of expertise in providing personalized, supportive administrative services designed to reduce the stress of anyone who is overwhelmed by the tasks that need to get done. Hello. She's efficient and organized with the ability to analyze a situation quickly and offer tailored solutions. She has her very own KISS principle, which helps her to delegate and feel great. She raised one son with ADHD as a single mom, and that son is now thriving as an adult. Through that process, she learned a lot about delegation. She's learned even more about how to delegate by supporting other women over the last years. I'm so excited to have Sue on the show to talk to us about delegation, one of my favorite topics. Sue, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Whitney. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. So before we start talking about, and I know everyone's probably thinking, delegation is something that I really need to do a lot more of, because I feel like as women, it is difficult for us to start delegating. Once we do it and start seeing the benefits and have a system like yours or some of the systems that I share, it makes it a lot easier and we can kind of roll with it. But there's that first hurdle of the why we don't do it in the first place. What do you think about that?
Oh, the why. The why, I think a lot goes back to the fact that we as women pride ourselves on being able to multitask and handle any situation that comes along. And we're harshly critical of ourselves if we can't handle things. And quite honestly, sometimes we're harshly critical of each other if we see that the other can't handle things. So it makes it really difficult for any one of us to ask for help, because then we're like, oh no, people are going to think less of us. And I don't think it should be that way at all. We should really be helping each other.
I totally agree. How did you learn that lesson?
When my son was in fourth grade, he started having issues. And I know your kids aren't quite to fourth grade yet, but fourth grade is the grade where they expect you to be like way more independent. They go from holding your hand up through third grade. And then all of a sudden, fourth grade, they just expect you to somehow be independent. And he started having problems where he wasn't turning in assignments or things weren't getting turned in on time. And this is all unbeknownst to me. The teachers never communicated. They never said, hey, we're having these issues. Hey, what's going on at home? Nothing. So they called myself and his dad in for a meeting. And the one teacher was just going on and on about how he doesn't pay attention in class and how he sits to the side and how he's not turning in his assignments and it's not her job to babysit him. And I mean, she was just totally going off. And I was like, there's got to be something more going on here. So we did eventually have him tested, and that's when he got his ADHD diagnosis. And I was just like, okay, I'm like a really organized, like school's never a problem for me or anything individual. And now I have this. What do I do with this? And I had no idea, but I knew I couldn't handle it all myself. So that was kind of like my first lesson in, yeah, you don't know everything. You can't do everything. You don't even know where to start.
That is a tough way to learn the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to anything involving our kids, right, it's just always extra from the emotional and energy standpoint. But I also feel like as mamas, it takes that to push us out of our comfort zone into a place that lets us level up. Like I know when I had my kids, when I had my first son, that was when my career took off. I know having my son actually made me a better leader. I was able to delegate better. I was able to communicate better. I prioritized with nobody's business. It really did let me level up. But for me, it was a hard time. And I can't even imagine for you seeing your child struggle in school and hearing from a teacher those words. Mm-hmm. I feel like those words were not nice words for a teacher to be saying, a little uncaring. But it sounds like it pushed you to really start to explore a world where you're not doing everything.
Right. I mean, I had to figure out the best way to support him and what that looked like. And sometimes that meant other things had to either go undone or I had to find somebody else to do them because he was my priority, obviously. And it led to a lot of, okay, now, because I'm an attorney by trade, it led to a lot of research on my part. Like, what does the school have to do? What can I do? What resources are out there? I will say it took some doing to find this information, to figure out, because he was in private school at the time, if I could make them actually accommodate him, what leg I had to stand on, and what, like I said, what even psychological resources there were out there, what kind of medications were there, what kind of support could I give him through like a counselor, finding a counselor that fit him. I have a sister who's a nurse practitioner. She was instrumental in helping me find medication resources and the benefits. I had a friend who has a severely handicapped son, and she had to go through the whole having the school system accommodate him. So all of a sudden, all these resources were kind of popping up for me when I needed them most. And I was able to start delegating things better. And it really taught me to A, even become more organized, B, the importance of a schedule, not only for myself, but for my son. And see what tasks were really most important. Is it really that important that there might be a little bit of dust on the end table, or is it more important that I spend time, working with him, giving him the structure he needs? So I was kind of like, okay, it's time to let go of some things and trying to find somebody else to do some of them.
I love that, the idea of letting go of some things and then finding someone to help you with what you need. How did you do that? What was your process? How did you ask people? How did you figure out what it is that you needed help with? What was that like for you?
Well, like I said, I'm a big researcher. So one of the very first things I did is I like went to the library and I started searching for all these resources on like books and articles and stuff. Like, what is ADHD? What does it encompass? You know, what is the best way to support the child? There was a book I had actually ordered from Amazon. It's called Late, Lost, and Unprepared. And that actually was very well written. It wasn't too long of a read, and it gave me a really good idea of like what kind of structure to set up for him. So, like I said, I found that the internet, good and bad, is full of great resources, but it's like all of a sudden you look around in your circle and you're like, oh, hey, you kind of went through this, even though your son's not ADHD, but he's handicapped. And like I said, my sister is a nurse practitioner, so she knew where to go and look up medications and stuff like that for me. And then the counselor, it took some doing to find the right one. But because I am, like I said, a lawyer by trade, I mean, I kind of had a pretty good idea of where to find the laws. But the most interesting thing I realized is a couple years before that, my friend whose son is handicapped, she had taken me to this like weekend retreat sort of thing where they talked about different things. And some of the things they talked about actually applied to the situation as far as the laws were concerned, because they talked about various acts that impact education and what they have to accommodate and how they have to accommodate it and that kind of thing. So all of a sudden that information, I was like, oh, hey, no, that applies. I need that stuff again. So, and just even setting up, talking to the school, figuring out what kind of plan of attack we would need. He ended up staying in that school for fourth and fifth grade. And by the time fifth grade was just about at the end, I was like, okay, I'm done with the private school. It's time to, fortunately, we were in a good public school system. So I was able to slide him into that. And they were far more accommodating. And he actually thrived academically, which is something he was really struggling with before that. It wasn't that he wasn't smart or he didn't learn it. It was just a matter of he needed some extra supports that they were kind of like, yeah, we don't want to do that. We're not going to invite him to turn in his homework and that kind of thing. And I'm like, we got to do something. So,
I love that. And I'm hearing two things that I just want to point out. One is this idea of advocating, right? Advocating for your child and how important that is to not just accept what is being told to you by like the institutions or the greater sources, by really advocating for your child. And the other that I heard you say was public school is actually a better fit. I think as mamas of little kids, right? Mine are 3 and 5. There's always that thought of like, oh, is private school going to be the best thing? Is that what we really need to do? And versus like, if I send my kid to public school, especially have the means to send them to private school, am I doing them a disservice?
right.
And It's a real question, and the school system you're in really depends, right? That is, if you're the school system you're in makes a huge difference in that to answer that question. But public school really can be better for your child based on their individual needs than a private school.
Absolutely.
And I know I found that in my life as well. My 3 and 5 year old, the oldest, we had him in Montessori for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't working. He needed a lot more structure. Our 3 year old is thriving in that environment, but for our 5 year old, it wasn't. And so we moved him into public school, and he's been doing so much better. But I had a lot of like internal, I don't know, conversations with myself about, oh, public school versus private. If I can send him to private, that's what I should be doing.
Right.
But it was really not the right thing.
Right. And I was gonna say, because as parents, we're fed a lot of, you have to do the absolute best for your child. So if that means expending money wherever you need to expend money, you should do that. And like you said, sometimes it's the simplest answer that is the right fit for the child.
It's so true. So going back to in this moment, right, you were pushed to really start asking others for help and to stop doing some things. And a lot of that centered around your son, and you're advocating for him and creating a world where he could thrive. Did that start to bleed out into other parts of your life that would help you as a single mom or as a woman start to thrive? Did you begin delegating other things because of what you had learned through this process?
I was working for the government at the time, still kind of am. And I was a supervisor anyway. So by virtue of what I did at work, it taught me how to be organized, how to stay on top of things, because I was responsible for a multitude of bodies. And at that point, I think I was supervising like 17 or 18 people. And we had gone from like 6 supervisors down to 3 because it was like the height of the Great Recession and they weren't filling jobs, and it was a crazy time. So some of those principles I learned to stay on top of things at work. So I wasn't working more than my 40 hours a week. All of a sudden, like really had to apply at home. And I had to really stop and think about, okay, what systems do I need to put in place to make sure he's doing what he's supposed to be doing? And I can support him. So it didn't end up being either a big screaming fest or, somebody dissolving into tears. Because anybody who has an ADHD child knows that regulating their emotions is not necessarily their strongest suit. So they will melt, as I always called it. So that forced me to really go, okay, I'm good at work. I need to be better at home. And then they sort of started feeding each other, where I became even more focused and organized and really good at creating structure, because I could see then some of my employees, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if you're ADHD, but some of the structure may actually help you. So I think it made me not only a better parent, but a better supervisor, better at my job.
I think that's so important what you just shared, which for me, what I really took away from it is this idea of the skills that you have at work can help improve your life at home, and the skills that you have to present at home can help improve your career, right? And make your life at work better too. They are cross-functional skills.
They are.
That, across that apply across all areas of life. Let's flash forward right now to today. We're in the year of 2024. I can't believe it. And you are using a system that you call KISS when it comes to managing things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For me, KISS stands for Keep It Simple with Sue. For myself, it really breaks down to the idea of, we all have things we need to accomplish. We only have so many hours in a day, and there's obviously competing priorities. So what I like to say to people is, you can't do everything. You shouldn't do everything. So there are ways where you can delegate things out, whether you're trading with a friend or bartering services with another business owner that you know, or paying for somebody to take care of some of these things. Your sanity and your time, whether it's with your child or just in your life, totally worth doing something like that. So, I'm of the mindset, do your research, find the best quality you can, and do what you can. I mean, I know it was Hillary Clinton who said it, but it takes a village. And in your own life, it takes a village. Nobody, no man or woman is an island. And it's better for all of us if we reach out to each other and help each other, because A, it puts out good into the world because you're offering help to other people, and B, it helps you receive good back. It's that whole, When you do something, you toss the pebble into the water and the ripples go. It's good ripples, and we need all the good ripples we can get.
Yes, here's to more good ripples. And I really do like that quote. I think the quote from Hillary, it's like an old African proverb that she shared.
Yes.
And as mamas, we really have to embrace that it's not just us who can do all the things that need to get done, right? That not only is it okay to ask for help, but you get more out of life when you do, and you create a better life for your kids.
Truly. And I honestly think it's more American society. We put so much value on individualism and we can do it all and life is grand, as opposed to some other cultures where it is normal, where they support each other. Whether it's the grandma helping take care of the kids or somebody helping doing the cooking or whatever it might be, they have it down pat. And we have a tendency to ignore that. That's a really good idea. We should be doing that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you shared earlier about the why is we worry what happens if we need to delegate and how will people view us and will they think we're weak or we're less than or is our value diminished by delegating? And we know that that's not true and we know that we need to not do everything because we just talked about it. When it comes to actually delegating, how do you figure out what to ask for help on, right? If you look at your plate and you're a little overwhelmed or a lot overwhelmed, you have all these things happening and you feel like they all have to keep happening and I have to do them, but I know I don't have to do them. I know I shouldn't do them. How do I figure out what is the best thing to let someone else handle for me?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to start with the first thing, which is you need to realize that doing it all is going to be your downfall because nobody can. The second thing is everybody has tasks that you either hate to do or anyone can do. And one of the samples I like to use is dusting. So one of the things, because I hate dusting, I delegated that long ago to my child when he was young. And God knows he didn't dust like I dust, and things didn't always get moved. And sometimes I could write my name in it, but for the most part, he did pretty well. And he was learning. This is the lesson. The lesson is you need help around the house too. It's not just me. We're going to help each other, sort of thing. So even if it's something as minute as dusting, or if it's trading babysitting services, or if it's hiring somebody to mow your lawn, there are certain things that you just, make a list and decide what it is that you can absolutely let go of and you're going to be okay. I myself am what I refer to as a recovering perfectionist. So I admit that there are times that it drives me crazy because nobody's going to do it the way I do it. But then it just comes to the point where you're like, does it really matter if they didn't move every single thing this week and dust under it? No, nobody's going to die. Dust bunnies are not going to attack me. It's going to be fine. So, make yourself a list, decide what you can let go of. That's not going to, set the house on fire or whatever. And like I said, do your research. Certain things, if you're delegating to the child, you can kind of keep an eye on what's happening there. If you're going to actually pay some money out, do some research, talk to people, get referrals, that kind of thing. And once you've done your research, I advocate you take the time to, whether you're doing interviewing or you're checking references or whatever, figure out who's going to be a good fit for you. Because, yeah, you can hire anybody to mow your lawn, but are they going to actually mow it and you want them to trim it too? So hire the best quality you can, delegate it, but that delegation doesn't mean that you totally walk away from it, but it also doesn't mean that you micromanage it. Check in to win, set up, regular meetings, check in with them, be clear about your instructions. Don't just sit there and go, yeah, go mow the lawn. They're going to maybe mow the lawn. Maybe they'll mow the front yard. Maybe they won't mow the backyard, that kind of thing. So it's in your best interest that you circle back and you kind of have to, like I said, you don't have to give up everything, but give up the things that aren't that big of a deal and aren't going to get you arrested or get you killed or whatever.
Yeah, I love one of the things that you said, and this is something I always talk about when I coach people is letting go doesn't always mean fully eliminating something. Sometimes it means letting go of the standard that you held before,
Exactly.
right? Like And I also love that you said delegating to children. So my 3 and 5-year-old, we have them clean up after dinner. There's a little handheld vac, and the 3-year-old, since he's been about 2, can wield that thing and get the crumbs off of his chair and the floor. And do I have to go follow up with him? Yes, I do. But he gets the majority of it, so then it's just a quick few broom sweeps for me instead of having to go through the entire floor. And I think that is that idea of, all right, what are the standards that I have for this person I'm delegating to, and being really conscious of what is the after work you might have to do. There's importance and value in thinking it through. And I think 2 of the other things that you said, which are things that I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm so glad that you said them too, as making sure that you're clear on the outcome, right? Whoever you're delegating to, that you are explicit in what success looks like. If cleaning the lawn is simply mowing the grass, awesome. But if cleaning the lawn, like you said, is also trimming the bushes, maybe picking up some leaves or pulling down vines, whatever it is that is important to you, you have to be clear on the outcome or else you're never going to get success. And that's not on the person who did it. That's on you because you didn't explain what you really need at the end.
I'm going to go back to also know to whom you're delegating, because the other person who lives in my house is my developmentally delayed sister. And she holds down a full-time job and everything like that. But you have to be consciously thinking, okay, she's very childlike. So you have to give the child directions as opposed to, I can't just say to her, go clean the kitchen, because she will just sort of wipe off a counter and that's it. And maybe you wanted her to do other things with that. So know to whom you're delegating, like whether it's a 3-year-old or a 24-year-old who maybe doesn't hold the same standards you do. It happens, So like you said, like it's okay to let go of certain standards. Recovering perfectionists, sometimes they forget that piece.
It is hard too when you're a perfectionist because you want to do everything to 100%, mm-hmm. But honestly, not everything needs that level of attention and that level of energy. Because one of the things you were saying earlier that I think links to that is figuring out like what is the worst case scenario if it doesn't happen to the level of perfection or to the standard that you normally would accept. So like you said with your son, right, having him dust and he doesn't move something, like are the dust bunnies going to suffocate you?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? Probably not. And that is really important to know so that you can be okay with the job not being done exactly how it's always been done in the past. One of the other things that I just want to talk a little bit more about before we wrap is what you were saying about knowing who you're delegating to. Because I think there's something really important in what you said of making sure that you have the wherewithal and the time to properly explain what it is that you need done to that person, right? So if you hire an expert, if you hire a house cleaner and she comes to your house, you can say, clean the kitchen, and they're going to know exactly what to do because they are an expert in cleaning. But if it's not a professional house cleaner, it's someone else in your house who maybe doesn't clean homes for a living, you have to take a little bit more time to explain to them, here's what I mean when I say clean, right? And make sure that they're actually able to deliver on all those things.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I think sometimes that's like where we go wrong because we get so busy and so focused on all the things we have to do that when we delegate, we sort of do it halfway. And then we can end up making ourselves crazy so that we're back to being overwhelmed because now we're micromanaging and maybe we don't need to micromanage. And then we get angry or very frustrated, at least with the person, because why didn't they do what I told them to do? I told them to clean the kitchen. So know to whom you're delegating and know the level of instruction you need to give so that they understand. Some people do better if you make a list and hand it to them. Some people can do well verbally. It just depends. I know with my son, if I want him to accomplish a series of tasks, couple things I've learned with ADHD is don't give them too much to do at once. And, they do pretty well with a list if they can check things off, but you can't make it too long, and don't give them more than like a couple directions at once, just because their attention span, it's gone. And I understand that and I can respect it. And I actually find myself, the more I try to multitask, the shorter my attention span gets. So if it can happen to me, I have to understand it happens to him. And it's just, he's not doing it to make me crazy.
That's right. I think it sounds like this idea too of if somebody doesn't do the task that you've given to them exactly how you expected, they're not doing it on purpose to make you feel bad, right? They're not doing it to make you crazy. I'm sure a plethora of other reasons, some of the ones we talked about. One, maybe they didn't understand the final outcome that you wanted. Two, maybe you didn't explain it right to them
Mhm.
or equip them properly with what they need to deliver on it. 3, maybe they just had a different understanding of success, right? Of what it means to do that task successfully.
For if it's your child, sometimes they do the worst job possible so that you don't make them do it again.
And this is true too. This is true too. And that's where you have to make sure to say, no, you need to go back and pick up all those socks, not just 2. Just
Exactly.
all the socks off the floor. They push boundaries, I guess, forever.
Mhm.
Cool. This has been such a great episode. I think the biggest takeaways for me are really thinking about this idea of like, we should not do it all. And we all have to understand that. And doing it all is our downfall, right? If you're
Right.
trying to do it all, it's going to be your downfall. And so look to delegate those tasks that are not bringing you the most joy or that you know someone else can do successfully. And for them to do it successfully, make sure that you define what success looks like to you and that you are able to either teach them or give them a very clear understanding of the outcome that you need so that you can get it.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So there we have some different ideas and ways that we can keep it simple with Sue. The KISS and delegation topics, right, that we were able to cover today. Before we go, I always ask one question at the end of the show, which is, Sue, can you tell us a little bit about your morning routine today?
Oh, it's obnoxious because I like to get my workout done before I go to work. Like, for instance, this morning I woke up at 4:30. I had pre-packed all my stuff because I know me at 4:30 in the morning. I'm not going to remember stuff. And I stage it where I remember to grab all of it. So I'm grabbing my gym bag and I'm grabbing my gym shoes and I'm getting dressed and I go work out and then I take my shower at the Y. So I'm not getting distracted by anything else. And then I personally work from home. So I come home and I have my breakfast and then I'm like ready to get started for the day. So that's kind of the flow most days, at least during the week, of how my morning starts. Usually the other occupants of the house are out the door like 7:30ish, 7:45, just depending upon their work schedules. So it's me and the dog. And then it's like, okay, this is my me time. I can work on my work and nobody's bothering me. But for me, like I said, I find that exercising first thing in the morning is my friend. It wakes me up, it gets my blood going, it makes my brain start firing on all the pistons that I need it to fire on.
I love it. That sounds like a strong routine. One follow-up question. What do your breakfasts normally look like? Do you eat the same thing every day or do you have something different? What's breakfast for you?
I do tend to eat the same thing every day. I'm a big lover of hot breakfast, so I kind of alternate between either scrambled eggs and bacon or oatmeal. Just kind of depends on how much time I have before I have to start work. And yeah, I do tend to eat the same things.
I think many of us do. Yeah, it's easier, right? But they both sound delicious. So thank you for sharing that, Sue. It was so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Savvy Working Mom podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen in. Also, make sure to link up with us at thesavvyworkingmom.com and on Instagram at thesavvyworkingmom. And please just share this podcast with any other mama who you think might enjoy or benefit from it. Until next time, remember, with intentional and daily action, you can live your best days now and forever.